Today we have Anirudh, who is a very young builder in Hyderabad.
Construction, real estate has been a part of my family for the last 3 decades now. We have seen Hyderabad grow right through its journey.
I think also you've done lower.
Being in the real estate, I started to see a lot of challenges on the legal aspects.
Is it the right time to buy a house?
Real estate in Hyderabad right now is not anymore affordable.
How do I know that that property is hydro-safe?
We need a Hydra NOC, but that has not yet been given clarity on.
How much loan can I get?
They consider 50% of their take-home salary, which can be contributed towards their EMIs.
At what stage of the property should I buy?
Typically, a real estate project at the time of launch is much more easier on the pocket. It gives them time to see the project grow.
What are the additional costs that come into picture?
Pricing sheet primarily comprises of the base price, the costs of your car parking and amenities are. Here, I think the buyer needs to question as to what exactly is he paying for.
How do I evaluate my resale price?
Apart from these amenities, the clubhouses, the locations, the maintenance of the project becomes a very key important factor.
What are the most common mistakes that you've seen?
So generally, they fall in the trap of cost. Cost is directly proportional to the quality of the product. I'm actually very surprised to see in the last few years where a lot of people are buying online. With the kind of real estate push the north of Hyderabad is experiencing right now, it's not too far before which the metro would be extended to this part of the town as well.
So you feel that's going to be the new Coca-Cola?
Probably 5-10 years down the lane, yes.
Hi everyone, today we have Anirudh, who is a very young builder in Hyderabad, and we are going to cover a very specific topic, especially for new buyers. Anirudh has been, part of Credai and mostly, I think, developing towards the north of Hyderabad. If you could give a little bit of insight about your journey and how it all started for you.
So basically, construction, real estate has been a part of my family for the last 3 decades now.
Oh, wow.
In fact, over 3 decades. I'm the third generation into the company.
Okay.
So if you really say that we have seen Hyderabad grow right through its journey over the last 3 decades, right from where purchasing a flat was almost difficult, or it's the first time somebody has built a flat in Hyderabad, to today where we are seeing skyscrapers in the city skyline. So it's pretty interesting the way my father sees, the way my grandfather used to see, and the lens through which I'm looking at now.
Yeah.
So it's been a very interesting journey. Started from ground zero. And now part of my company by Chavala Ventures, where I'm the director. So it's been a very interesting journey to see Hyderabad grow multifold over the last 4 decades, and also looking positively ahead for the future of Hyderabad.
I think also you've done law, right?
That's right. So what happened, the reason why I did law was being in the real estate, I started to see a lot of challenges on the legal aspects.
Right.
And since I wanted to be in the business and also know the in and outs, so I kind of did a course in LLB.
Okay.
I just finished my course recently.
Okay.
But that did give me quite a few ideas on how legally, as a builder, what I should be looking at, and maybe the buyers too, what should be they looking at. So it gave me a lot of big spectrum as per to what law is, because it's a big field of law.
Right.
And what actually pertains and probably applies to us is a limited, but then there's so many issues which can be taken. But yes, knowledge is a very important thing for us.
Right. I think it can cover a large aspect of having that knowledge in law and being a developer. You combine that, and I think it's a great combination for a person, right?
And today the legal officers are so busy. It's always good to know what we are doing.
Yeah.
It comes through experience, but once we have an academic background, it's much more focused, and that brings down a lot of time in preparation for these.
Right. Today we're going to cover a very specific topic, maybe a certain set of audience who are looking to buy homes for the first time, right? Right now, what do you feel that is it the right time to buy a house for first-time buyers?
I think the first-time buyers comprise a big portion of the general sales which happen in our industry. This is primarily because Hyderabad being a cosmopolitan city, we have a lot of inflow, a lot of new, probably the new graduates from all over the world, and not only India, from all over the world, who would want to come to Hyderabad, experience Hyderabad over the years, and then they would want to settle down because of the various advantages, weather, pricing, amenities, access to airports, good infrastructure. So I think primarily our focus of sales is definitely the first-time buyers, which considers a big margin, a big percentage of our sales. Saying that the first-time buyers, it's actually a big decision for a first-time buyer to take, because the real estate in Hyderabad right now is not any more affordable. It has become a luxury segment per se,
Right.
more or less. So it's a big decision financially, also for a new time buyer to take a decision at what time he wants to access the real estate. And saying that, I think Hyderabad right now, keeping in mind the future development where we are getting at, it is a good time for a first time buyer to evaluate and see if we can have a buy-in and then ride the high which is proposed. The wave which Hyderabad is gathering, I think it is going to go up further. So I think it's a good time for a first time buyer to definitely consider to buy in a property or a real estate in Hyderabad.
Say, suppose I'm at that point of buying. What are the things that I need to consider when I'm looking out?
So the first time buyers are generally the ones who probably do not have good experience in evaluating a project or a developer or probably the basic necessities. So I would first suggest the first time buyers, as we are talking, to check if it is RERA registered. Because today, I think after the government has passed RERA, all the builders, including me, have registered our projects with RERA and declaring all our sales. Not only that, the stages of constructions, and it is more structured as than what it was before. So it makes it definitely the developer liable to whatever expenses, to the cost of constructions, to the various stages, and to handovers as well. So I would suggest the new time buyers to first check if their project is registered under RERA.
Okay.
That would be probably the first checkpoint for a new time buyer.
Okay.
Then apart from that, I think the new time buyers have to be very clear as to which location they would want to reside.
Okay.
Because buying a house is a long-term commitment.
Right.
Unlike
Because
any
you're
other,
living there, right? Yeah.
unlike any other investments they make, maybe stocks, which is easily movable, but these are more an immovable asset which they are making. It is a long-term commitment for a new time buyer. So I suggest that they need to take a decision on which part of the city they would want to reside. Because today, Hyderabad, luckily we have such a beautiful road network. The internal roads are good. We have a metro which is already functional.
Right.
Then we have an outer ring road,
Yes.
easy access to the airport. Then yes, we have the local metro line,
Yes.
the MMTS line, which is well connected and it is densely used by most of the population.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they need to decide in their mind on which part of the town they would want to settle down. And now Hyderabad has grown on 3 different directions. One towards the west, predominantly where the IT sector is existing. Then it has also moved towards the north. A lot of new announcements have come. And also there's the Genome Valley, which is coming up. It's a big pharma hub right now.
Yes.
And then definitely towards the east, that is Uppal and beyond, because that area has got really good traction right now. And people are able to travel from there towards their workplaces.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think they need to decide which side they want to be on, and then probably research more on which projects which might suit their requirements.
So you mentioned that, I'm looking for a project, and you mentioned that RERA is one of the things. Are there any other documentation that I need to look at? Okay, I've already looked out for a property. There are few properties that I've shortlisted that I like. What is that I want to see in terms of legality, documentation, the authenticity of a project?
So typically what happens on the legal side of the project is what I will try to explain. So what happens is when a project gets approved in RERA, a certain checks on the legality is already done by the legal officers at RERA. Apart from that, when a builder is ready to launch his project, he gets few bank approvals done through various banks, nationalized banks and private banks, which today are also very strong on their legal per se. They dig deep, at least a 30 years to 40 years track of the legal title deeds is definitely vetted by the advocates and the legal panels of the banks. Saying that, I think as a new time buyer, today we live in the era of online. We have easy access to data. So I would suggest that the new buyers look up the encumbrance certificate is the first check I would probably suggest, in which you know or you can see how the titles have come through. And also the EC also tells you if there are any mortgages the builder has done on the project and so on. So that gives a first legal check for a new time buyer.
Okay.
Apart from that, it's very difficult for a new time buyer to go straight up and ask the developer, what I want to look at your legal documents. But then these kind of checks where they're approved by banks, RERA certificate, and then definitely the encumbrance certificate.
Right.
And definitely, if you want to check, there's also the HMDA has a website where you could see the master zoning of every location.
So what do you mean by master zoning?
So basically in HMDA, they have these maps, the survey numbers of various villages and towns, where they say this falls under lakes, this falls under multi-purpose zone, this falls under. So that's just an indication. The builders definitely will not be violating those rules, but just per se to just cross-check where we are, master plan roads where they are coming up. There's a master plan road also which is available online. The future prospective roads where they are coming. So you can get a brief idea as to where they are, how it is going to come up. So probably these are the few legal checks I would suggest the new buyer to do. But typically in Hyderabad per se, the history of developers, we have a clean shit compared to other builders.
So we spoke about the authenticity of the project. Is there a way that we can analyze the quality of the project? Is there a certification, third-party certification that comes in to know that? And because as a layman, I wouldn't really know how to assess quality, right?
As the builders are now registering with RERA, we have something called the defects liability period, which ranges up to 5 years. So what happens is that developers too, today, it's become a highly competitive market too, because we have a lot of stock and a lot of builders competing. At the same time, a lot of buyers also trying to compare apple to apple between projects. So today, in today's market, I don't see a reason why a new-time buyer would have to compare or get a third-party assessment done on the quality of the project. But I think today, the brands which the developers use, starting from steel, tiles, paintings, the brands are there, like the Asian Paints and so many on. So I think the specification sheet, if the buyer, the new-time buyer or an old-time, again a buyer, is wanting to check on the quality, he can definitely check the specification sheet to counter-verify that if he has used good materials. And on the hindsight, yes, there are few third-party vendors, there are few contractors, there are few PMC vendors who, for a charge, evaluate the whole property and let you know what they think about the property is. But I have never seen any customer in Hyderabad, at least in my last 10 years or 15 years of experience, come back to engage somebody to find whether the quality of the project is there or not. So I think engagement of a third party is a far thought, but the specification sheet, which the builder definitely gives as a part of their agreement, is something they can dwell on and question and check if there's what he's promised to what he has delivered is in the same lines or if not better than that.
And you have the right to ask when you're evaluating it.
I think today the customer is a Raja. So we have to answer to all the questions he has. And yes, I think most of the builders will be more than willing to explain to them in case there's a change of specification to a better spec. If there's a change of specification, to inform the customer that there's a change of specification. And I'm sure most of the builders would explain what their specifications are.
In terms of buying, right? If you're a first-time buyer, obviously there's an age bracket, maybe from 30 to 40.
Correct.
Right? And most of the audience here have a certain bracket of income as well.
Correct.
So when you're buying a property, what should I consider to take a loan? Like a percentage of the property price.
What I think is having access to a real estate project at a young age, say per se about 30 years, when you're married and you want to settle down in a good house, good residence, because it's a very sentimental decision to buy a house for anyone that matter, either the first or the second house. And early access to the home loans. The banks too are more comfortable dealing with the younger generations, I would say, because they have a long employment period where they can service the loan, whatever is the access they get. So I would the new time buyers typically is around 35 years, what we have observed, who want to typically buy a house and settle down because family and others come in. And so I think a home loan is typically what a first-time buyer must take. First thing, because it's a big valuation. Real estate is expensive. So we have to plan ahead of time. And typically the home loan, the banks give up to 25 to 30 years if it is a young access. Up to 60 years is what they consider as an earning period for the new time buyer. So I would say starting early, planning well ahead of time. And also because it's a long-term commitment. It's not a short-term commitment. And inflation also, which has to be considered by the new buyers. And also access to schools. Today the fees are increasing, so are the costs of living have increasing. So an early access to real estate flat will actually open up a lot of comforts for the customer, I feel.
I think on an average, consider those salary brackets between, say, 10 to 12 lakhs a year. How much loan can I get from a bank?
This is what we have observed as a trend, how the bankers assess how much loan they can give to a buyer. So what we have observed is they consider 50% of their take-home salary as a base, which can be contributed towards their EMIs, typically. And it ranges from 50 to 60 in few cases. Because what we have observed, the new buyers, typically both the husband and the wife are working. So they kind of collate both their data and then they have more access to the real estate finance. So typically 50 to 60% is what of the broad take home is what they consider for a home loan. Saying that there are multiple other factors the bank considers. One is the employment, who the employer is and how long has he been employed, the buyer, to probably frame whether he's consistent in his job. Second is ITRs. The income tax returns have been filed consistently over the last 3 to 4 years. This is something the bank definitely considers. And the other big important thing is the CIBIL score. That is called the credit score. This credit score is generally based on how well you maintain your credit cards and your buys and you have no defaults in the past. And the CIBIL score actually is the main player, which an indicator maybe the bank looks at to even decide the rate of interest which is applicable on the buyers. In case the CIBIL score is on the lower side, it's basically around 800 points is the CIBIL score. So if you're around close to 700 to 750 is where you have good access to a home loan with better interest rate. And when you have a little low score on the CIBIL side, a little interest rate is jacked up as a security for the bank.
Okay.
So these are probably the 3 points which the bank primarily focuses on.
And as a buyer, I should be able to know that if a property does not have the loan service, should I be worried?
Not really. Now, all the big builders typically get the project approval done through the banks. So the process is pretty fast. That the legals, everything are taken care of, the valuation of the property is taken care of, and then comes only the profile background check and the profile valuation by the bankers, which typically takes about 15 to 20 days if all the documentations are in place. But Hyderabad also has another phase of builders who are the standalone builders, who probably do not build huge stocks of flats like the multi-story buildings. We call it the standalone buildings. Typically 10 flats, 20 flats, 8 flats. That is a range. For them, typically they don't go to all the banks for bank approvals. They take it case by case. In which case, the new buyer might have to wait it out a little longer because a banking background team will check the legality, try to get it approved. Then they have a technical approval of the project. They also check if it is registered in RERA. RERA has become a mandatory for any band of builders. Above 8 flats is where it is applicable. So yes, so it is not difficult. It is not an indicator that the project is not safe or is not good. But the bank will take its own time, a month or 45 days to evaluate it and get it approved. And then the person can approach for the bank for loan.
So as a buyer, at what stage of the property should I buy? You know, like your soft launch, your move-in, and your different phases of the property. What is the best phase to buy it in?
So typically, we have 3 stages. One is definitely the pre-launch or the launch stage. And the next one is the construction phase. And next one is the ready-to-move-in stage.
Right.
In a pre-launch phase, generally, of late, it's been a trend in Hyderabad where the builders invite their old customers, their loyal customers, and their relatives and friends to a launch party, probably explain and showcase the project and try to generate interest for the customers to buy.
Right.
And the next one is a launch phase, which comes after the soft launch or the pre-launch. And that's when it's open to all public. And then ongoing is while the construction is going on, and ready to move in is when the occupation certificate and handovers for the projects are done. Typically for a new time buyer, I would suggest that he start off at the launch stage.
Okay.
Because it gives him time. It gives him time to see the project grow. Price point also, typically a real estate project at the time of launch is much more easier on the pocket as compared to the other 2 stages of the project.
Right. And
then coming into the construction phase, traditionally, Hyderabad customers, what I have seen is they would like to see the buildings above the ground. There's some traditional thinking of the market. So a lot of people believe in after the basements are done, once the slabs are ongoing, is exactly when they would want to transact. And yes, buying a ready-to-move-in project, typically a person who is in a hurry to move into a property is when he takes into a ready to move in property. So to answer your question, what are the risks involved? Typically, a launch project has a life cycle. Typically, a 3 years to 3.5 years to hand over is a typical cycle for a project. But saying that the monetary appreciation a buyer would see over a period of 3 years as compared to buying at the time of ready to move in,
Right.
you see is a big monetary addition to what he's invested. Typically, a real estate project appreciates close to 40 to 50% is what we have seen in the last 5-10 years in Hyderabad. So that's a good value addition for a new time buy. And if you say in terms of risk, since we are today in an era of digital media, a lot of reviews going on, the background checks of the builders are already done and so on. So I think typically most of our projects have been on time. And I say that a risk during the launch to ongoing to ready to move is not that a difficult one for a new time buyer to see. But just he has to take care of the past, the irregular checks as to is the builder is credible, is the project viable, are the sales going on, and the stages of construction, are they meeting their milestones? These are the certain checks he has to check.
So as a first-time buyer, Anirudh, how do I know I've that mine is the most competitive price in and around the properties around that area, similar kind of properties? Yeah.
I would probably check the online portals, which are pretty accurate right now. To name a few, Magic Bricks, 99 Acres and Housing, where they have a research-oriented tabs as well in their portals, where you can check a specific location you're interested on.
Okay.
So the data comprises of what is the current trends running in that location, maybe the prices as well over the last few months, what is the price range in that location.
Okay.
And also it gives you the various options in that location, various projects in that location. And typically it also gives you the rate of land as well.
Oh, okay, nice.
So in which case you can see it on the screen as to what are the various price points you're looking at. But what happens on ground, that is you have multiple projects, multiple specifications, multiple amenities, multiple sizes. That is the size of the flat could be a 2 BHK to a 3 BHK to a 4 BHK. And in specifications too, you could have good tile work, you could have good marbles, windows, you could have probably UPVC windows to aluminium windows. Typically, the buyer needs to check in detail as to what the specification is of each of the projects, because each one adds to the cost of the project as well.
Yeah.
The higher the specification, the higher the cost he looks at.
Okay.
So typically, the price range will not be a big difference when they're in the same location, apart from when they're in different stages of construction.
Apart from the cost, right, you have per SFT cost, what are the additional costs that come into picture when you're buying a property?
So there are many charges. Right now, the builder, apart from the base price,
Yes. Yeah.
what the builders quote, the builders give you a price sheet.
Yeah.
Once you finalize the size of the flat you want, which floor you want, or what facing you want a corner flat. So once that is done, he gives you a pricing sheet. And that pricing sheet primarily comprises of the base price and what the cost of your car parking and amenities are. And then it also talks about the PLC charges. That's the premium location charges for the flat. As to if it's a corner flat, is it an east-facing flat, and is it facing the garden, the clubhouse, the open amenities of a project.
So you mean premium location within the property?
Within the
Okay.
property, yes.
Okay.
Because each property has its own advantages of location. One might be looking up a nice forest zone, one might be looking up a very nice, maybe a lake far off, or the outer ring roads, and so on. So the natural ventilations, because no obstructions on that side of the project.
yeah.
So these are called as the PLC charges, which the builders quote for. So typically, an ongoing project has an incidence of GST, which is right now for a residential project pegged at 5%. And then apart from this are the car parking charges, the amenity charges. And again, each builder has his own style of quoting the rate. Few people give a lump sum charge, say 800 rupees a square feet. Few people probably bifurcate it much further and say car parking ke liye this much, for amenities this much, for clubhouse this much. So here I think the buyer needs to question the builder as to what exactly is he paying for, especially when it comes to these per safety costs. He needs to be very clear as to what is he paying for.
Also, you have your registration costs as well. So are there any other costs apart from, say, registration, your amenities and all of that? Are there anything else?
Yes. Basically, the agreement of sale comprises of all what we have discussed. That's the base price, car parking, amenities. But there's another part there. Generally, we call that as the other charges.
Okay.
These charges are basically towards after handover charges, as we call. The first one being the corpus fund.
Okay.
When we do these big buildings, we definitely need a corpus
Okay.
to probably attend to the various repairs which come over a period of time, because we lose a lot of mechanical items into the project, like the lift, the pneumatic pumps, the diesel generators. So these are all capital intensive, and they require a lot of capital to maintain. So it has become a trend in all the builders to collect a corpus fund that is calculated on the square feet basis. This is something they collect and they deposit into the association's account as and when they are formed. And it is typically made into a fixed deposit, and the interest is accumulated, and it is used only when there is a big capital investment required into the electronics of the project. Apart from this, there is also something we collect in advance called the maintenance fund. Typically, builders collect the maintenance fund for probably a year or two, depending on the size of the project and the number of phases they are going into. But I've observed that Hyderabad, typically 2 years in advance is the maintenance fund they collect. And also few projects now have inculcated EV charging points.
Yeah. Yeah.
So most of the builders are charging an extra
Okay, for that.
setting up that EV charging. There are many new policies still being framed on the EV side.
Okay.
So it'll keep moving, and
It'll evolve with time.
it'll evolve with time. But right now we are taking an extra charge for the EV charging points. Typically, these are the broad heads of accounts on which the builder generally charges the customer. And it is typically captured in the agreement of sale as well.
Okay, all of this is mentioned in
In the agreement of sale. And that is being done to maintain consistency, because we deal with so many customers in one project. It's good to be on pen and paper. So it's the same for everyone. It applies to everyone and anyone who buys a property in the project. Broadly, these are the charges. Typically, in the past, there used to be hidden charges per se, but now since we have come under RERA, and also that the builders have a format of agreement of sales which is consistent followed. So these charges are typically captured in the paperwork itself.
Oh, okay.
So there's no surprise charges as such.
So it's not called hidden charges anymore.
No more. I think we have created that transparency for the market too. And yes, registration charges is something which will be applicable at the time of handover, once the occupation certificate or handover of the flat is being done to the buyer.
As an investor, I want my flat to appreciate to an extent, right? Eventually, that is why I'm investing apart from living in the apartment. Suppose I want to resell. How do I evaluate my resale price?
So I think to answer your question, if you want to resell a product, your product should be something which is more attractive to the prospective buyer. Typically, somebody who wants to buy a ready-to-move-in property, who wants to have good access to social infrastructure, being schools, hospitals, entertainment zones, and good connectivity as well, with good roads and the metro connectivity.
Yeah.
More often than not, when a buyer buys an apartment or a villa, he looks out for these considerations. And when you talk about resale of resale of a project, apart from these amenities, the clubhouses, the locations, the maintenance of the project becomes a very key important factor in decision making, because all these projects are big. They need certain amount of facility management to be done, and if it is not well maintained, obviously the resale value is affected. So typically what happens is, in big projects, they have these facility managers who take care of the facility, and hence the maintenance cost might be a little premium or a little more than what is expected. But these factors will really affect the resale value.
Okay.
And coming to other factors, I feel a vibrant association is definitely something the buyer should consider.
Okay.
Because you're living in a community now which, though they're not family, that we are sharing the same space with X number of people around. So a vibrant community, a good customer base, a good residence definitely will be a strong factor in resale.
So how does a developer make sure that when you say a community, right, like in a basic community, they have a precedent and all of that. How does he make sure that it's vibrant, it's active, and everybody's contributing to that?
Well, it's a difficult question to answer.
Yeah.
Because,
How would you do it?
So let me explain with an example where I am right now. So I'm a part of a community of about 500 apartments, and we recently taken the handover from the builder after he's finished the 2 years of his maintenance, committed maintenance, and then we had a smooth handover. about the corpus funds, the maintenance, the warranties and the guarantees of all the electronics used into the project. Now, typically what happens is the builder will assist the new association for the few 6 to 7 months after handover as well. Because a smooth handover is very much required. Because a lot of systems are involved in maintaining a property, human resources, systems, and then collection of maintenance from all the customers.
So when you say systems, what is included in?
So typically lifts, diesel generators, common amenities. Then we have the large play areas which need to be regularly maintained.
Okay.
And then we have the housekeeping. Then we have landscaping maintenance as well.
Okay.
Then we also, now we are no more, we have these overhead tanks in our projects. We are going for the pneumatic pumps.
What does that mean?
So basically pneumatic pumps, we have huge sumps located underneath the basements typically, where the water is collected, the groundwater or the municipal water. And then there are some motors which are installed on top of the sumps. And these maintain consistent pressure in the pipelines.
Okay.
Since all our projects are multi-story off late, and pressure in the taps is to be consistently maintained. So these pneumatic pumps generate pressure, maintain pressure in the pipelines. So as and when you switch on the tap, you have good pressure in your taps.
Okay.
So, and this is something new which has happened to us 5-10 years back, and it's doing very well. There's a lot of power saving as well.
Okay.
And it also helps the builder that need not build overhead tanks on that heights. So, but this is a machine, this is a system, so that needs to be maintained well. So these are all the costs which typically add to the maintenance. So to say if the president is good or the secretary is good, it's a difficult one for the builder to say that. But at the same time, I think everybody understands when you live in a community, now you're a social animal, you have other residents living along with you, people who take up this responsibility. It's a thankless job, I must say, for these presidents and secretaries, because it takes a mountain to move all of the 500 residents in our project. So I think it's very difficult to say
they don't become a favorite person all as
absolutely.
well.
Because always we live in a democratic world, so everybody points fingers at others. But then I think it is a difficult job to maintain a property, especially when it is not your main forte. These are all elected personalities in the community, so very difficult to maintain.
There are many ways to shortlist a project. One of them is going through agents. How do I finalize an agent? Whether like the credibility, how do I trust him? How do I know that he has enough knowledge? And is there a certification that they have? So, are certain things that I need to check before I finalize an agent?
Traditionally, in Hyderabad market, is driven by agents. A lot of the past deals have happened through agents. Saying that, now since the stock has gone up in Hyderabad, and dubious agents also have increased. In the past, we have seen many of them proposing projects which don't exist. So, with RERA on board on the real estate sector, they have also started registration of real estate agents.
Okay.
It has become compulsory for any agent to propose any projects or to even display any projects, just like the developer. They have to register themselves with the RERA authority.
Okay.
And also the builder also needs to engage with a RERA registered agent only.
Okay.
So this is kind of a rule which has been imposed by RERA. So there is definitely the certification which is required today for anyone to sell products on behalf of the builder. But saying that, the real estate agents, the access to data of customers, they have. They're well advanced right now. Good information, good knowledge, and they give good comparisons also, because they talk to the customer to understand what the requirements are, and then probably come up with a basket of options. And typically for a buyer, he would understand when he speaks with a good agent, because he will be giving them options, trying to hear them out, what they are, and he'll probably gauging which locations, what specifications. So I think it's very easy to gauge whether the agent is what we call is a good agent or a bad agent. But saying that, you should always check if he's RERA certified, and also visit along with him to the projects.
Okay.
Because over the phone, many things happen. But physically, when you walk into the projects along with them, that's when you really see whether he is really
understood what your requirement. And
yes.
Okay.
And whether it's real, what he's saying is correct or not, and so on.
So as the first time buyers, what are the most common mistakes that you've seen, and how can one avoid that?
For a first-time buyer, he always wants to have access to a very economical flat. There's a low-cost flat. He wants a premium product at a low cost. So generally, they fall in the trap of cost. That is, whichever is the lowest cost is probably where I want access to.
Right.
I think that's something the buyers should move away from, because today the projects which are on display are of a good size, and good advertisements also are being done on the platforms. And he should definitely avoid the trap of cost. That is, ये तो सस्ता पड़ रहा है, I want to take this flat. Because you should always remember that cost is directly proportional to the quality of the product.
Okay.
If somebody is offering you a product at X cost, and then that's the kind of features you can ask for. Somebody is paying a little more on the cost. So that is one big mistake I see the new buyers wanting to consider as a major decision maker for buying. And definitely they also don't look at properties. They don't thoroughly research on the properties. And I'm actually very surprised to see in the last few years where a lot of people are buying online. A lot of online marketing have happened. A lot of builders make a lot of good reels. They show a lot of things. But the customers must physically visit the site to see what they are buying, to experience the connectivity, the amenities, what they're doing, quality, because model flats are always on display.
Yeah.
So there's a second one which I felt that most of the buyers, because today they say मेरे को time नहीं है. That is such a big decision for them to make.
Yeah, because you're putting in so much money.
Yes. And also the NRI market too, because they're not physically here, so they rely primarily on their friends or relatives who are here to see. So these two things are the major mistakes which I feel the first-time buyers should avoid. And yes, the RERA is a beautiful tool for an industry, because you get to see the legal tracing, you get to see the progress, and you also authenticate the builder that yes, he's doing a good job. So RERA certification is a must, which I feel every buyer, not only a new time buyer, any buyer or investor in real estate must look out for.
So I think that it's become transparent to an extent. The whole transactional part of it, credibility, how you want to look at things. 80% of check is done online, and that's amazing. I don't think that was the case even 10 years ago, right? And now there's a new thing, Hydra. How do I make sure? And there are a lot of people out there who are not aware of the true sense of Hydra, like what it actually means, and why has it become a hot topic of this time. How do I make sure, or how do I know that that property is Hydra safe?
So Hydra is a new buzzword for us now.
Yeah.
So even for our builders, it's become a buzzword. Is Hyderabad Disaster Response and Asset Monitoring and Protection Agency.
Okay.
This is a brainchild of our current Chief Minister.
Yeah.
And it actually is in line with another organization which exists within the GHMC, which is the EVDM, Enforcement, Vigilance and Disaster Management Department of GHMC. So primarily the existence of Hydra is to protect the government bodies, especially the lakes, the nalas, the buffer zones, and not only that, any illegal constructions which are existing or being constructed in these restricted zones. It can also be a park, a government park. It can also be open spaces which have been left in layouts. So these are all no construction zones for any builders.
Okay.
So as you said, Hydra Safe. As of now, it's a new organization which has been formed. And we are yet to receive concrete information as to how we can make our property Hydra safe. But I think the few of the checklists which we've been hearing the news over, it's been evolving the news as well. Recently, they have given us a circular stating that any person staying in a house or a dwelling which is illegally constructed, they will not proceed for destruction of that property or bringing that property down.
More like a stay order.
More like it's a show cause notice for them to.
Got it.
But saying that in Hyderabad, traditionally, there have been a lot of encroachments. Nothing to hide from that. At the same time, with the Musi River development, which our Chief Minister is visioning it to be a world-class facility. So I think it is very much required for such kind of organizations to be stern and take collective action against this. But to summarize, I don't think as of now, we have not received any proper indications from the government.
Okay.
But in our recent interactions, they said they're going to, the jurisdiction of Hydra also, we have seek clarity as to what all areas would it cover and do we require a Hydra NOC as such? Because it's all over the news that right now we need a Hydra NOC, but that is not yet been given clarity on. But I think in the next few weeks or a month, we'll definitely receive much more clarity.
So now I want to talk more about north of Hyderabad. What is the current market like in north of Hyderabad? And I also believe that, prices were much more reasonable compared to, say, the west, right? But what is the ground reality currently?
So North Hyderabad typically covers Kompally, Medshil, and a part of Bachapalli as well, primarily. So over the years, this has traditionally been a villa market, an open market, because it's very close to Nizamabad and people coming from that part of the town into Hyderabad. Over the years, what has happened is Kompally has got many new announcements, developments, such as the expansion of the existing road which is passing through Kompally. A multi-layer flyover also was proposed and the works are ongoing. And also the proposed metro, phase 2 was also proposed to reach all the way to Kandakoya, where the IT park for the north side of Hyderabad was proposed. And the idea behind focusing on North Hyderabad came about to decongest the traffic in Hyderabad, because we see the whole concentration of development on the western side. So with that kind of an idea, the north zone was brought into focus. It was called as Look East policy was another policy which came is to the eastern side of Hyderabad. So traditionally, North Hyderabad has been for villas or lands or farmhouses. But over the last 2 decades, what has happened is because of the various developments, the announcement, the Genome Valley which is coming up at Shamirpet as well. So a lot of interest has been generated in around Kompally and Medshil. And a lot of employment opportunities have started to happen. And actually, you'll be surprised to see that whatever infrastructure or stores or multiplex we see on the western side, the northern side right now has all the big stores, the big multiplexes, the big hospitals. In fact, the northern side has better schools, bigger schools, colleges, a much well-rounded setup, I can say, on the north side. So as we all know, once we have a good social infrastructure in place, the real estate is bound to happen, bound to increase. The prices have also definitely have gone up over the last 5-6 years considerably. And the lands have become expensive and hence the villa projects have reduced. And so have the gated communities. Multi-story buildings have started on the north side. Typically, the connectivity, if you say as well, from the north side, it's very well connected to the high-tech city or the Gachibowli, to the ring roads, which probably takes you half an hour to reach. And also with the recent rejig of COVID, a lot of work from home has started and people are required to get to office twice or thrice a week. So the travel time is actually not that bad. It takes the same amount of time from Hyderabad in any other area too. So people have started to realize that is a much well-rounded location. The prices too are not as high as the western side, but yes, the affordability is definitely a factor. And also the schools, access to schools and hospitals has become.
So there has also been an announcement earlier in terms of metro going from Paradise to that part of Hyderabad. Where are we at that? What is your insight and thoughts about it?
So yes, in the previous government regime, we were announced metro from Paradise all the way to Kandakoya. And the works were also kind of marked on ground. But the current government has still not given us any clarity as to whether this is ongoing. And what we have understood is that he's more focused on connecting the LB Nagar stretch to all the way to the airport. But saying that with the kind of real estate push the north of Hyderabad is experiencing right now, it's not too far before which the metro would be extended to this part of the town as well.
And that's part of town, right? It's mostly influenced by the local business owners. And how do you think that affects the IT crowd?
So you'll actually be surprised to see the lot of buying which is happening right now in north of Hyderabad is influenced by the IT sector.
Oh, is it? Okay.
And predominantly, and definitely the industrialists as well.
Okay.
So what we are currently observing is people, the buyers, prospective buyers who stay in the center of Hyderabad are exiting those locations and trying to move towards this northern side of Hyderabad. So typically it's more of IT sector, which is very surprising because people are willing to travel through the ring road rather through the internal roads of Hyderabad.
Okay.
So it's typically taking the same amount of time. So that is kind of adding to the traction of the IT buyers.
Okay.
And North Hyderabad also has a lot of green cover, per se, to talk of. A lot of these central agencies are there, and then the forest zones are there.
Yeah.
So the temperature on the northern side is effectively a few degrees Celsius lower than the other sides of Hyderabad.
I agree. And that side of Hyderabad, largely, it's villas and single buildings, right? So what do you think is driving the high-rise construction currently?
As I told you, since people are moving towards the north, I mean, away from the city to these locations, and close connectivity to the ring road, and the developments of the Kandakoya IT Park, the Genome Valley, and the infra push that is going into north with the highway expansions, the flyovers coming through. So the connectivity is increasing, is going to increase probably in the next few years. So the land prices have increased. So the access to villas or independent buildings has become difficult because the amount of infra push or the development interest which is being generated. So which is pushing the builders to go into the gated or the multi-story format of projects. So that's the reason why we see the traditional market now being overcompassed with the high-rise culture, which we are seeing in the gated communities.
Got it.
So the demand is surging, definitely. And definitely more projects will come up in the north of Hyderabad, keeping in mind the developments and the interest shown by the customers.
Yeah. So you feel that it's going to be the new coca pit?
Probably 5-10 years down the lane, yes.
Yeah. Okay. That's going to be very, very interesting to see because I think the coca pit happens so fast and this part of it, developing and all of that. And it has, to an extent. And for it to see the drastic change or an upgrade in terms of appreciation, it's going to be very interesting to see and how the movement in Hyderabad is going to happen in terms of travel. So what is your projection in the next 3 years in terms of inventory, the constructions that are going to happen, the type of constructions, the number and population moving in to that side of Hyderabad? What is your prediction?
I think movement of customers or buyers into that market will be directly proportional to the employment which is being generated to specific to that zone.
Okay.
So if you're asking me in the next 3 to 4 years, the government has already announced the Genome Valley, which is a big pharma hub, which is also during the COVID time, they have exported a lot of these COVID vaccines out of the Genome Valley.
Yeah.
So until and unless the government pushes a big infra and IT opportunities, work opportunities, industries. Kompally also is known for its logistics management. Logistics sectors are created. So until these avenues are created, which I think they will because the infrastructure push is already done. Now it's a matter of consideration and also close proximity to the regional ring road also from this location. So there's a lot of added value to this location than what, as I say, what meets the eye. So I think in the next 3 years, what I see of North Hyderabad is definitely it will compete with the Western Hyderabad with in terms of products, the style of products, the size of products, and in fact, the amenities also, the social infrastructure. We see a lot of colleges and schools also moving to that part of the town because the affordability of land is far more reasonable compared to the Western side. So I see that it will definitely compete with the Western side and the sudden change in the customer mindset that there's another zone of Hyderabad which is opening up. So I see very closely competing with the Western side.
It's a new opportunity for Hyderabad. I know you've given us a lot of insights today and it's been very, very interesting to talk to you. You've given insights about the north of Hyderabad and everything that a new buyer needs to consider. And I think in terms of audience, there are a lot of people out there who want to do that at this point, right? Who are between the age of, say, 30 and 40. And I think with this episode, they'll know everything that they need to check and then go ahead and invest. So I think it's been very fruitful for a lot of people out there. And I really, really appreciate that, you've taken the time out, you've come here and detailedly explained everything. And it's been a pleasure having you here. Thank you so much for coming.
It's a pleasure.
Yeah.
Thank you.